In 1965, Honda released a portable generator that fit inside a briefcase. 300 watts, four-stroke, designed by a single engineer named Mikio Koyama, who'd been a labor union secretary the year before. Yamaha hadn't built a generator yet. Wouldn't for another 8 years. This is the story of a war that one side had already won before the other even showed up. Honda versus Yamaha. Most people think motorcycles. The HY War of the late 70s, when both companies tore each other apart over the Japanese motorcycle market. But there was a second front, one that almost nobody talks about. Portable generators, the machines that hum on construction sites, keep RVs alive, and sell out across Florida every hurricane season. On that front, the fight was never fair. The idea for Honda's first generator didn't even come from Honda. In 1959, Masaru Ibuka called Soichiro Honda. Ibuka had co-founded Sony and had just unveiled the Micro TV, a portable television that needed electricity where there was none. He needed a portable power source, and he knew only one man stubborn enough to build it. Honda agreed. The first prototype, the E40, barely qualified as useful at 40 watts. But 6 years later, in January '65, the E300 hit the market. 300 watts, housed in a casing that Hiroyuki Hatakeyama had shaped like a travel suitcase. Hatakeyama had been working on power tillers and got transferred to the project in the spring of '64. The thing ended up selling over 500,000 units. Yamaha entered the market in 1973 with the ET1200, a generator designed to power groundwater pumps on construction sites. No design statement, no visionary on the phone, just a byproduct of the company's multi-purpose engine lineup. 8 years behind from day one. To understand why Honda dominated generators so completely, you have to go back to motorcycles, because that's where the scar tissue came from. In 1979, Yamaha's president publicly declared that his company would overtake Honda as the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. What followed was 3 years of industrial warfare. Honda flooded the market with new models, sometimes launching a new bike every single week. Yamaha tried to keep up. Both companies slashed prices, burned through inventory, and buried their dealers under machines nobody had ordered. By January '83, it was over. Yamaha's president issued what the Japanese business press called a formal surrender. Honda had won, but the victory tasted like ash. The company's own 75-year anniversary history admits it openly. Honda had lost sight of what it called the joy of buying, and in chasing market share, it had also destroyed the joy of selling and the joy of creating. Takeo Fukui, who was running Honda's NS500 racing program at the time and would later become the company's 6th president, put it more bluntly. He said the upper management was filled with a sense of crisis. That experience rewired Honda from the inside. The lesson was simple: never fight a price war again. Never chase volume for volume's sake. Build something your competitor can't copy in 18 months and then let the gap do the work. The generator division absorbed that lesson completely. While Yamaha spent the '80s recovering from the motorcycle war and spreading its engineering resources across outboard motors, snowblowers, racing kart engines, and pressure washers, Honda did something that looked boring at the time, but would turn out to be decisive. They went deep on portable generator technology, specifically inverter technology. In 1987, Honda released the EX300. On paper, just another small generator. But inside, it carried something no portable generator had ever had: an inverter circuit. The output was rough, a rectangular waveform, not the clean sine wave that sensitive electronics need. But the architecture was there. Honda had planted a flag that Yamaha wouldn't even attempt to reach for almost a decade. 9 years later, in '96, the EX500 refined it. Dedicated integrated circuits now produced actual sine wave output, with total harmonic distortion under 3%, which is the threshold that makes it safe to run laptops, medical equipment, and anything else with a microprocessor inside. Clean power from a machine you could carry with one hand. And then, on June 29, 1998, Honda dropped the thing that broke the race open for good. The Gene 21 series, 3 models, the EU9i, the EU24i, and the EU28IS microprocessor-controlled sine wave inverters. A system Honda called Eco Throttle that adjusted engine speed to match the load automatically, cutting fuel consumption and noise at the same time. The EU2000i, built on this platform, would go on to become arguably the most iconic portable generator ever made. Both models came standard with parallel capability, meaning you could link 2 units together to double your output, a feature that would become a major selling point for RV owners and job site crews. Yamaha's first credible answer to that technology, the EF2400IS, didn't reach the American market until February 2005, 7 years later. 8 years behind on market entry, 11 years behind on inverter technology, 7 years behind on sine wave inverters. At some point, you have to stop calling it a rivalry and start calling it what it was, a head start so large that catching up would have required Yamaha to make generators their strategic priority, and they never did. By the early 2000s, Honda's EU2000i had become something rare in the power equipment world, a product with a genuine cult following. Campers swore by it. Film crews wouldn't use anything else. After every major hurricane, from Katrina to Sandy to Irma, the EU2000i was the first generator to vanish from shelves. In the United States alone, which accounts for roughly 43% of the global portable generator market, Honda's red inverter generators became shorthand for the entire category. You didn't buy a generator, you bought a Honda. Yamaha's competing EF2000IS, launched around 2009, was a solid machine. 44 pounds, parallel capable, decent noise levels. But it ran on a 79 cubic centimeter MZ80 engine, a carryover from the older platform. Honda's EU2200i, which replaced the EU2000i in 2018, packed a 121 cubic centimeters GXR 120 engine that Honda had originally developed for heavy-duty construction equipment. Put those side by side, and the gap is hard to ignore. 121 cubic centimeters versus 79 cubic centimeters, and the difference showed up in every spec that mattered. Head-to-head tests consistently measured the Yamaha at 57 to 67 decibels. The Honda came in at 48 to 57. On a logarithmic scale, that gap is the difference between a quiet office and a normal conversation. The EU2200i also shipped with electric start as a standard option on higher trim levels, a convenience feature that Yamaha treated as an afterthought on its competing models. Yamaha responded with the EF2200IS, but kept the same 79 cubic centimeter engine, same architecture, incremental improvements where Honda had made a generational leap, and then Honda nearly threw it all away. In November 2012, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission issued a recall for about 150,000 EU2000i units. The fuel hoses could leak. The Los Angeles Fire Department went further. They posted a formal use prohibition order. If you owned one of the affected units, you were told to stop using it immediately. 7 years later, in March 2019, it happened again. This time, roughly 200,000 EU2200i family units. The screws holding the fuel valve together could loosen during use, letting gasoline seep out while the engine was running. Then, March 2020. A third recall, 345,000 units. A different defect this time. The inverter assembly could short-circuit when exposed to salt water, and the whole thing could catch fire. Class action lawsuits followed. Nearly 700,000 units across 3 recalls in 8 years. For any other brand, that sequence might have been fatal, but Honda did something that turned the crisis into a moat. In July 2020, Honda announced Co-Minder, a carbon monoxide detection system that would ship across their entire generator lineup. They were the first manufacturer to commit to that across every model, and the system meets and exceeds the PGMAG 300 standard, which is the industry benchmark set by the Portable Generator Manufacturers Association. The system shuts the engine down if it detects 800 parts per million instantaneously, or 400 parts per million sustained over 10 minutes. The context matters here. The Consumer Product Safety Commission reports that nearly 100 people die in the United States every year from carbon monoxide poisoning caused by portable generators, most of them during power outages, running their generators indoors or in enclosed garages. Honda took a product liability nightmare and turned it into a safety leadership position. Yamaha added CO sensors to a few select models, but by that point, the company was already making a very different kind of decision about its future in this business. In March 2023, Yamaha Motor-Powered Products quietly issued a press release. The company was in talks to transfer its generator, multi-purpose engine, and snowblower business to a firm called Earth Power Products, a subsidiary of Mako Seiki. By July, the deal was done. The business was folded into a holding entity called Wilby Company Limited. No farewell press conference, no retrospective ad campaign. Yamaha's global website simply updated its generator page to note that production of Yamaha models had ceased and sales would be limited to remaining stock. 50 years in the generator business, and that's how it ended. A line on a website. But here's the part that makes this story worth telling. Yamaha didn't lose to Honda. Not really. The technology gap was always there, and Yamaha had lived with it for decades. What changed wasn't the distance between Yamaha and Honda. What changed was that a third player entered from below, and suddenly the economics of being the number 2 Japanese generator brand stopped making sense. The third player isn't a company. It's a city. Chongqing, China. Loncin and Zongshen, both headquartered in Chongqing, had spent years building small gasoline engines. Not for their own brands, at least not initially. They were OEM suppliers. Loncin manufactured engines for Generac, for Toro, for Electrolux. Zongshen did the same. They learned how to build Honda GX-class clone engines at scale, the same basic architecture Honda had refined over decades, and then they started selling their own machines under white-label arrangements. Champion, Predator, Power Horse, AI Power, Pulsar, Duro Max. If you've bought a generator from Harbor Freight or Amazon in the last 5 years, chances are a Loncin or Zongshen engine was inside it. Most of those units carry EPA certification and CARB compliance, which means they can be sold legally in all 50 states, including California, where emission standards are the strictest in the country. The numbers tell the rest. Champion's 3,500-watt inverter generator retails for roughly $700. A Honda EU 3000 IS runs about $1,300. The Champion does 90% of what the Honda does. For a lot of buyers, especially the ones grabbing whatever's left at Home Depot the day before a hurricane hits, that math is obvious. Some of those budget units even offer dual fuel capability, running on either gasoline or propane, which is a feature Honda has been slower to build into its core inverter lineup. The global portable generator market hit $2.64 billion in 2025. The top 5 companies, Honda Power, Generac, Yamaha, Loncin Motor, and Zongshen Power, account for 61% of that revenue. But inside the segment that actually grows the fastest, the under $1,000 inverter category, the Chinese brands are eating share every quarter. Honda still holds the premium position. The EU 32i, launched in 2022, is their latest statement. The lightest 3 kilovolt ampere-class generator in the world at 26.5 kilograms, with batteryless fuel injection and Bluetooth app control. It is, by any measure, a beautiful piece of engineering. But it retails in Germany for over 2,500 euros. And that price premium now buys you brand trust, dealer support, and resale value. Not a technology advantage that the competition can't touch. Not anymore. Yamaha understood that arithmetic before most people even noticed the shift. The company looked at its generator division and saw a business where they'd always been second in quality and increasingly uncompetitive on price. The middle of that sandwich is the worst place in industrial strategy. So they walked away. And I can't even say they were wrong. If I'm running Yamaha's product strategy and I'm looking at a division that's permanently second in quality and increasingly uncompetitive on price, I'm not sure I'd fight for it either. Sometimes the smartest move in a war is admitting it was never really yours to win. There's something almost poetic about how this played out. Honda invented the portable generator category because a Sony executive needed to power a television in 1959. Yamaha chased Honda for half a century without ever fully committing, and the war that nobody noticed ended the way most real wars do. Not with a decisive battle, but with one side quietly packing up and going home while a completely different force was already occupying the territory. The generator war between Honda and Yamaha is over. Honda won. But if you zoom out far enough, the real story might be that the age of Japanese dominance in this market is ending too. Not with a bang, just with a product listing that says limited to remaining stock.